I confronted my Brazilian girlfriend about her overly physical relationship with her adult son, and it exploded into one of the worst fights we've ever had. Now I'm wondering if I overreacted, crossed a line, or just finally saw the red flag I was afraid to admit was there.
"What are you watching?" she asked, her voice carrying a faint Brazilian lilt as she peeked over her son's shoulder. "Just some TV," he replied nonchalantly, his eyes glued to the screen. I nodded, sinking deeper into the plush couch cushions. It was a typical Friday night at my girlfriend's apartment. Her son, Lucas, was home from his trip to Brazil. The air had the scent of her home-cooked feijão, a comforting aroma that filled the cozy space. Despite the language barrier, I enjoyed the easy camaraderie between us. "I'm going to take a shower," she announced, her English still slightly broken from her accent. My girlfriend, a stunning 43-year-old named Isabella, walked into the living room wearing nothing but a towel. She had the body of a woman half her age, with curves that could make any man's head turn. She was unabashed about her nudity, something I found both refreshing and slightly uncomfortable given Lucas's presence. As she dropped the towel and headed for the bathroom, I couldn't help but steal a glance. Her bare skin glistened with the warmth of the apartment, her breasts bouncing gently with each step. But what caught my attention was Lucas's reaction. His eyes followed her like a hawk, taking in every inch of her body, lingering on her round ass and the shadow between her legs. "Lucas, eyes up," I said, a hint of annoyance in my tone. He turned to me, a smirk playing on his lips. "What? It's just a body." "It's your mother's body," I reminded him. He shrugged it off. "In Brazil, it's different. We're more open." I nodded, trying to ignore the discomfort that had suddenly settled in my stomach. It was clear that their relationship had boundaries that didn't quite align with my own cultural upbringing. I decided to let it go, chalking it up to the cultural differences between us. The next evening, I arrived at Isabella's place earlier than planned. The door was unlocked, so I stepped in quietly, not wanting to interrupt their mother-son bonding time. The living room was empty, so I headed towards the bedroom, expecting to find her getting ready. What I saw instead was a scene that made my heart race and my stomach churn. Lucas and Isabella were on the bed, entangled in a way that was unmistakable. He was lying behind her, his body pressed against hers, face buried in the crook of her neck. His hand rested on her waist, his thumb tracing lazy circles on her bare skin. As the door creaked open, they both jolted up, their expressions a mix of surprise and guilt. I didn't know you were coming," Isabella stammered, hastily pulling the blanket over her body. "It's okay, Mom," Lucas said, a hint of amusement in his voice. "It's just how we say goodnight." The tension in the room was palpable, the awkwardness thick enough to cut with a knife. I stared at them, trying to make sense of what I had just walked in on. Was this truly normal in Brazilian culture, or was there something more happening here? "It's fine," I forced a smile, feeling my cheeks flush. "I guess I should have called first." Isabella rushed over to me, wrapping her arms around my waist. "Felipe, I'm so sorry," she whispered. "It's just our way, nothing more." Her son looked at me with a knowing smile, his eyes sparkling with mischief. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was enjoying my discomfort. We sat down at the kitchen table, the three of us, and had a stilted dinner. The conversation was forced, with long pauses that hung in the air like unspoken secrets. Every time I caught Lucas's gaze, it felt like he was silently daring me to say something, to challenge their relationship. After dinner, I retreated to the living room, pretending to watch TV while my thoughts raced. Could I accept this? Could I continue a relationship with a woman whose boundaries with her son were so blurred? And what about Lucas? Did he have feelings for his mother that went beyond mere cultural norms? Isabella joined me, her hand soft on my thigh. "You're quiet tonight," she said, her eyes searching mine. "Is everything okay?" "Yeah," I lied, not wanting to ruin the evening, just tired. But the image of them on the bed together, the way his hand had caressed her bare skin, kept replaying in my mind. It was like a taboo I hadn't known existed had been laid bare in front of me, and I wasn't sure how to process it. Later, as we lay in bed, Isabella snuggled close, her naked body pressed against mine. She kissed me passionately, her hands roaming over my chest. Normally, this would be a moment of pure bliss, but tonight, it felt tainted. "I know it's strange for you," she murmured against my ear, "but it's just how we are." I held her tighter, my mind torn between the love I felt for her and the disturbing scene that kept replaying in my mind. I didn't know if I could ever be comfortable with this aspect of her life, but I also didn't want to lose her. The days that followed were a dance of avoidance and forced normalcy. I found myself looking at Lucas differently. Every gesture, every touch between them sending a jolt of discomfort through me. I tried to ignore it, to tell myself that their relationship was none of my business, but it was like a persistent itch that I couldn't quite reach. One evening, as Isabella was out grocery shopping, I couldn't help but confront Lucas. "Look, I don't want to make this weird," I began, "but what I saw the other night." He leaned back in his chair, a knowing smirk on his face. "It's just our way," he repeated. "It's not my way," I said firmly, "and if you two can't respect my boundaries." His smirk grew into a full smile. "What boundaries?" The challenge in his eyes was unmistakable, and suddenly, the air between us was charged with something more than just awkwardness. It was a power play, a silent declaration of war over the woman we both loved in our own ways. As Isabella returned home, her laughter echoing down the hallway, I realized that this was a battle I wasn't sure I could win, or if I even wanted to. But one thing was clear: I needed answers, and I was determined to get them, no matter how much it might cost me. The following weekend, while Isabella was out with friends, I decided to have a man-to-man talk with Lucas. He was lounging on the couch, scrolling through his phone, when I sat down next to him. "Lucas," I began, my voice measured, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." He glanced up, his dark eyes meeting mine with a flicker of curiosity. "Sure, what's up?" "Your relationship with your mom. It's not just cultural, is it?" I said, watching his reaction closely. For a moment, he was silent, the only sound the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Then, with a sigh, he set his phone aside. "You're not from here," he said, his voice low. "You don't understand." "I'm not trying to judge," I replied, "but I need to know what I'm walking into." He leaned back, crossing his arms. "In Brazil, family is everything. We're close, yes, but it's not like you're thinking. It's just affection, pure and simple." But his words didn't sit right with me. There was something in the way he said them, a hint of defensiveness that didn't quite match his nonchalant shrug. I pressed on, feeling the tension in the air thicken. "And the other night," I said, "what was that?" Lucas's smile was enigmatic. It was just a goodbye kiss, a way to say I care for her before she went to sleep. In the nude? I couldn't keep the skepticism from my tone. "We're adults," he said, his voice taking on an edge. "It's not like you Americans, all uptight about the human body." "But you guys were spooning," I pointed out. "That's more than just a kiss." He leaned in closer, his breath warm on my face. "You're the one making it more than it is," he said, his voice a challenge. "Or maybe you're just jealous." The accusation hit me like a slap. Jealous? Of what? The thought had never crossed my mind. Or had it? I took a deep breath, trying to push the doubt away. "I just want to make sure we're all on the same page," I said, standing up. "I care about your mom. A lot. And I don't want anything to come between us." Lucas's eyes narrowed. "And what if I say there's nothing to worry about?" "Then I'll take your word for it," I lied, my stomach churning. "But if I ever see anything that makes me uncomfortable again." He nodded, his smirk never wavering. "Understood." As I walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being played, that Lucas was enjoying this dance of deception, pulling the strings of our relationship like a puppet master. And yet, part of me clung to the hope that maybe, just maybe, it was all in my head. But deep down, I knew it wasn't, and I had to decide if I was willing to live with the unspoken secrets that seemed to be woven into the very fabric of their bond. The next few days passed in a tense silence, each of us tiptoeing around the elephant in the room. I tried to focus on work, on the mundane tasks of daily life, but my mind kept drifting back to that moment in the bedroom. The way Lucas had looked at me, the smug confidence in his posture, his hand resting so casually on his mother's waist. One evening, unable to bear it any longer, I sat Isabella down and laid it all out. "I need you to tell me the truth," I said, my voice shaking. "What's going on between you and Lucas?" Her eyes searched mine, a hint of sadness in their depths. "We have a special bond," she admitted, "but it's nothing more than that. We've always been close, yes, but it's not sexual. It's just Love. But the way you guys are with each other? I protested. It's not just love. It's something else. In Brazil, she began, her voice soft, the line between love and affection is different. We don't see the need for the same boundaries you do. It's not about hiding or deceiving. It's just who we are. I nodded, trying to understand, to accept. But the doubt remained, a nagging voice in the back of my mind that whispered of darker truths. I want to believe you, I said. But it's hard. Isabella took my hand, her grip firm. You have to trust me, she said. We can't change who we are because of what others think is normal. And so, we carried on, each of us pretending that things were fine, that the tension between us was just a figment of my overactive imagination. But every time Lucas looked at me with that knowing smirk, every time I saw the way his hand lingered on Isabella's skin, I couldn't help but wonder. Then one night, as we lay in bed, Isabella rolled over to face me, her eyes gleaming in the dim light. There's something I need to tell you, she said, her voice a whisper. My heart hammered in my chest. Here it was, the confession I'd been both dreading and waiting for. What is it? Her hand slid over my chest, her fingers tracing the contours of my muscles. Lucas and I, we have a special way of saying goodnight. It's just our thing. And what is it? I managed to ask, my voice barely audible. Her lips curved into a smile that was both sweet and seductive. We kiss, she said. And sometimes, when we're feeling close, we'll lie together, just for comfort. But I saw more than that, I said, the words sticking in my throat. You did, she admitted, but it's nothing to be concerned about. It's just how we express our love. I stared at her, my mind racing. Was this really love? Or was it something more, something darker? The question hung in the air between us, unspoken but undeniable. I need you to trust me, Felipe, she said, her eyes pleading. Please don't let this come between us. And so, I swallowed my doubt and kissed her, telling myself that love came in many forms, and maybe, just maybe, this was one of them. But as I drifted off to sleep, her son's laughter echoing in my ears, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being played for a fool, that in the tangled web of their relationship, I was just a pawn in a game I didn't fully understand. And as the days turned into weeks, the question grew louder and louder in my mind. Was I really okay with this? Or was I just lying to myself? The tension in the apartment grew palpable, the air thick with the scent of secrets and unspoken desires. Every time I saw Lucas look at his mother with that hungry gaze, every time Isabella's hand brushed against her son's thigh a little too casually, I felt a knot in my stomach. One evening, as we were watching a movie, Lucas's hand reached over to grab a bowl of popcorn. His arm brushed against Isabella's breast, and instead of jerking away, she giggled and playfully slapped his hand. Easy there, Lucas, she said. But the way she said it didn't sound like a mother scolding a son. It was flirtatious, teasing. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to get out, to clear my head. I told them I had an early meeting the next day and needed to go home. The relief on Lucas's face was unmistakable. He was enjoying this game of cat and mouse. As I drove home, my thoughts swirling like a tornado, I couldn't help but feel like I was losing her. To her son. To their strange, twisted bond. I knew I had to confront them again, to demand answers. But fear held me back. What if I didn't like what I heard? The following weekend, I decided to host a small dinner party, inviting a few friends over to try and dilute the tension. It was a disaster. The second my friends saw Lucas's hand on Isabella's leg, their eyes widened in shock. They whispered among themselves, throwing me concerned glances. The evening ended with an excruciating silence as everyone left. Lucas and Isabella looked at me expectantly, as if waiting for me to say something. You guys have to stop, I blurted out, unable to hold it in any longer. This isn't normal, even for Brazilian culture. Isabella's face fell. We're sorry if it makes you uncomfortable, she said, her voice tight. But we can't change who we are. What are you two hiding from me? I demanded, my voice rising. I need to know the truth. Lucas stood up, a challenge in his stance. There's nothing to hide, he said coolly. It's just love. You wouldn't understand. I need to think, I said, and stormed out of the apartment, slamming the door behind me. As I walked the deserted streets, my thoughts raced. I loved Isabella, but I couldn't live like this. The thought of her being with her son in that way made me sick. But was I just being a prude? Was I overreacting to something that was culturally acceptable? When I returned to the apartment, Isabella was waiting for me, tears in her eyes. "I can't lose you," she said, her voice breaking. "Please, Felipe, try to understand." I took a deep breath and pulled her into my arms. "I want to," I murmured, "but it's so hard." We talked long into the night, her son's presence a silent third wheel in the room. She swore there was nothing more than love between them, that it was just a different way of showing affection. But the way she avoided my eyes, the way she fidgeted with her fingers, told me there was more she wasn't saying. Finally, unable to take it anymore, I laid down the ultimatum. "Either you tell me the truth," I said, my voice shaking with anger and pain, "or I walk away." Isabella looked up at me, her eyes full of anguish. "Felipe," she whispered, "what we have is special, but I can't live a lie." The next day, she called me, her voice trembling. "Lucas and I need to tell you something," she said. "Please come over." My heart pounded as I drove to her place. What would they say? What would I do if it was what I feared most? When I arrived, they were both sitting on the couch, looking at me with a mix of dread and hope. "We have a confession," Lucas began, his eyes meeting mine. "What you saw, it's not just affection. We have feelings for each other. But we didn't mean to hurt you." Isabella took my hand, her eyes pleading. "We love each other," she said. "But we also love you." The world tilted on its axis. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My girlfriend and her son, in love? It was like a twisted soap opera plot, except it was my life. The room felt like it was closing in on me, the walls painted with a grotesque scene of their incestuous bond. "What do you mean?" I choked out, my voice barely a whisper. Isabella took a deep breath. "It's complicated," she said, "but we can't help how we feel." Lucas leaned in closer, his eyes never leaving mine. "We know it's not what you're used to," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "But it's who we are, and we thought, if you really cared about us, you'd accept us." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Accept them? Accept this sick perversion? I felt the bile rise in my throat. "I don't know what to say," I managed to croak. They sat there, watching me, waiting for a reaction. The silence was a living thing, a beast that grew bigger and more malevolent with every passing second. "You want me to be okay with this?" I finally said, my voice shaking with anger. "To just ignore what I've seen and pretend it's all in my head?" Isabella nodded, her eyes shimmering with hope. "We just want to be happy," she said. "And if you love me, you'll make this work." "Or what?" I spat, the anger bubbling over. "You'll both just go on behind my back?" Lucas's smile was cold. "We've been doing it for years," he said. "You're just the latest in a long line of boyfriends who couldn't handle the truth." The revelation was like a sledgehammer to my soul. Years? They had been doing this right under my nose, and I had been too blind to see it. "Get out," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Both of you. Now." They looked at each other, and for a moment, I saw the bond between them, the silent understanding that they shared. Then, with a sigh, Lucas stood up. "If that's what you want," he said. Isabella followed, her eyes pleading. "Please, Felipe, we can work this out." But I couldn't even look at her. The woman I had loved had been lying to me all along. "Get out," I repeated, my voice a growl. They left, and the apartment felt like it was suffocating me. I grabbed my keys and stormed out, needing to get away from the scene of their betrayal. The drive home was a blur, my mind racing with images of them together. I couldn't shake the feeling of disgust that clung to me like a second skin. How could I have been so naive? When I walked into my apartment, I knew what I had to do. I called Isabella, my hand shaking. "It's over," I said, my voice firm. "I can't do this. I can't be a part of whatever sick game you two are playing." There was silence on the other end of the line, then a sniffle. "I understand," she said. The finality of those words was like a knife to the heart, but as the conversation ended, I realized that a weight had been lifted. I was free from their twisted world. The following days were a blur of anger, hurt, and confusion. I avoided their calls, their texts, their pleas for forgiveness. I couldn't bring myself to look at them, to even think about them. But eventually, the anger gave way to sadness. I missed Isabella, the woman I had thought I knew. And in the quiet moments, I found myself wondering if I had overreacted. Was it truly wrong? Or was I just a product of a society that was too uptight to see the beauty in their love? But then I'd remember the way Lucas had looked at me that night, the triumph in his eyes, and I knew that there was no beauty in manipulation, no love in deceit. And so, I moved on. Slowly, painfully, but I moved on. I threw myself into my work, my friends, my hobbies, and with each passing day, the memory of their betrayal grew dimmer. I never told anyone about what had happened. It was a secret I carried like a lead weight, dragging me down whenever I allowed myself to think about it. Months went by, and slowly, the pain began to ease. The images of them together grew fainter, the sting of their betrayal less sharp. One evening, as I was scrolling through my phone, I came across a photo of the three of us from before it all went sour. Isabella was laughing, her eyes sparkling with life. Lucas had his arm around her, a smug look on his face. I felt a pang of something, regret, maybe? But I pushed it aside. It was over. It had to be. Then, one night, she called. My heart skipped a beat when I saw her name on the screen. We hadn't spoken since that final gut-wrenching conversation. "Felipe," she said, her voice small and broken. "I need to see you." I hesitated, the memories flooding back, but something in her tone made me agree. We met at a quiet cafe, the kind that existed solely for moments like these. She looked tired, her eyes red-rimmed and her smile forced. "I'm sorry," she said, the words tumbling out of her mouth, "for everything. We never meant to hurt you." I nodded, sipping my coffee, feeling the heat burn my throat. "What happened between you two?" I asked, the question I had avoided for so long. She took a deep breath, her gaze flicking to the floor before meeting mine. "It started after my husband left," she said. "We were both lonely, and we turned to each other for comfort. It grew from there. I know it's not right, but I can't help how I feel." Her honesty was like a punch in the gut, but I kept my face neutral. "What about Lucas?" "He loves me," she said, her voice cracking, "and I love him, but not in the way you think. It's complicated." I didn't know what to say. How do you respond to something so fundamentally wrong? "I want you to know," she continued, her eyes searching mine. "We've stopped. After you found out, we realized it was wrong. We're working on it." I stared at her, the doubt in my heart growing. "How can I trust you?" I finally asked. Her eyes filled with tears. "You can't," she whispered. "Not yet, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn it back." The silence stretched out between us, as thick and uncomfortable as the air in her apartment the night I had walked in on them. Then she reached across the table and took my hand, her touch gentle and warm. "Please," she said, "give us another chance." I didn't know if I could, but as I looked into her eyes, the love I had felt for her swelled up inside me. It was a love that had been bruised and battered, but it was still there. "Okay," I said, the word feeling heavy on my tongue. "But no more secrets. No more lies." Isabella nodded, her grip tightening on my hand. "I promise," she said, her voice earnest. "We'll get help. We'll fix this." The next few months were a roller coaster of therapy sessions, awkward conversations, and painful realizations. It was a slow climb out of the dark pit of deceit, but we were making progress. Lucas moved out, and the tension in the air dissipated like smoke in the wind. We took it day by day, rebuilding the trust that had been shattered. It wasn't easy, and there were times when I wanted to walk away, but something kept me there. Maybe it was the hope that love could conquer all, or maybe it was just the stubbornness not to let them win. But as the months turned into a year, and the year into two, I began to see the woman I had fallen for again. She was different now, more open, more honest, and our relationship grew stronger, the foundation laid on the truth she had finally shared with me.